It's the most wonderful time of the year for an MMA fan. Dana White Contender Series is back, and starting this Tuesday, for the next 10 weeks in a row, we're going to have 5 fights to enjoy, not only as MMA fans, but we're also going to be able to see what is coming in to the UFC. If you get a win in dramatic fashion, you're probably getting a contract, and in some weight classes, even if you just get a win, you're probably going to be able to get a contract and make your way into the UFC. These are some really fun fights because there's a lot on the line. You know, this is a big opportunity for these guys. They want to put on a show in front of Dana White. Dana White is always there in attendance, so you get put in front of the boss, and these fights are usually pretty dang good. I'm going to go through every single fight on the first week's card. And, of course, you know, we got to throw out the little love to the Dana White Contender Series GOAT right here. You know, I'm thinking about, how am I going to open these videos? What am I going to have on the screen? I think I'm just going to throw some random Dana White Contender Series fighters on there once a week. This week, it's Torres Finney. All right, the winningest fighter in Dana White Contender Series history, 3-0. Fought twice last year and fought one time the year before. And he's 3-0, man. Finally got that contract on the third time. So, shout out to Torres Finney. But let's get into the fights, man, because that's what you're here for. Christopher Ewert, I guess, starting us off in the first fight of the night. This is what they got scheduled right now. Christopher Ewert, minus 155, taking on Yuri Panferov. Panferov, been on the Contender Series before, actually lost to the man Torres Finney. That was Finney's first fight on the Contender Series. Panferov came in there undefeated as well, and I think he really went in there thinking he was going to be able to play jiu-jitsu because that's what he normally does. When you look at the guy's skill set, it's more of a jiu-jitsu base. And he was on the feet with Torres Finney. He kind of found some success, actually hurt Finney a little bit in that fight, but he got bullied. You know, Finney's not going to be easy to submit because he's such a bowling ball. And ultimately, Finney just kind of broke him, found the back, and rear naked choked him. So, I mean, that's not a good look. Torres Finney's not exactly some amazing grappler when it comes to getting submissions. And Panferov, I looked at the guy and I thought, this guy's really not fighting anybody good. Like, he is not fighting anybody worth anything. I believe he trains in Connecticut and he's fighting on the regional scene in Connecticut in a very, very bad promotion. Like, this dude does not fight anybody good. Since he lost that Finney fight, I believe he's gone back and gotten 2 victories, but again, against 2. So he comes in as the underdog. Christopher Ewert comes in as a slight favorite. Ewert was supposed to face Jackson McVeigh on the pay-per-view, what was that, UFC 317, when he was filling in for Cedric Dumas, but he couldn't make the weight. And as you can see on the screen here, he was a little bit out of shape. Now, he was supposed to fight originally on the Contender Series, but then they tried to bring him in to fight Jackson McVeigh on short notice. He couldn't make the weight because he was out of shape. He normally looks in better shape when he's going to be, you know, fighting in an actual fight. So they wanted to bring this guy in. They thought this guy was UFC level, and that tells me more about this fight than anything. Is they didn't call Yuri Panferov. They called Christopher Ewert, who's undefeated, who they had scheduled for the same date on the Contender Series. They called Ewert and not Panferov. So right off the bat, I think they think Ewert's better than Panferov, and I got to agree with them. And I look at him skill-wise, I think Ewert is he's definitely the better striker. He's more of a brawler, but he has a lot of volume. He kind of wants to break you with his pace and his pressure. Chilean guy, you know, he's probably going to have some pretty dang good cardio. I don't think he's going to go in there just absolutely clobber Panferov with the first punch he throws. Doesn't have a ton of power, but I think he could probably break him as the fight goes on. And Panferov, I don't think wants to be on the feet because his base is jiu-jitsu. He's mostly a good grappler. I don't think his cardio is that good. He can be taken down, but I don't know that Ewert's even going to try, so that might not even be part of the game plan. Panferov is a little bit bigger, though. I will say that. You know, he's a guy that has fought at some of the bigger weight classes. He's going to cut a good amount of weight to make 185. But overall, I think Ewert's just going to be able to break him as the fight goes on. You know, maybe Panferov can get him down early. I just don't really think his wrestling's going to be all that great. And Ewert, I think, has actually fought better competition as well. So I'm going to take Christopher Ewert here for the pick. Minus 155, I think, is looking pretty dang good. You know, because I just think he's a lot better. Never been sold on Panferov. And big thing for me here is, like, since he lost to Finney, he has gone out and beat 2 absolute cans. All right. Doesn't really do anything for me. if you're going to lose on the Contender Series, I want you to go out and get some good wins and then come back to the Contender Series and be proving it. But he didn't really do that. So, we also have another guy we'll talk about later. But for the pick, it's going to be Christopher Ewert, minus 155. Doesn't look too bad, man. Doesn't really look too bad. I might have to get involved. If you want all the bets, you jump in the Home of Fight Picks Premium membership, use code HeyJive. That's where you're going to get all my bets on Dana White Contender Series and the UFC every single week. Link down in the description below. But let's move on. Another fight here. We got Radley de Silva out of Canada taking on George Mangos out of Australia. I mean, I've heard a lot of hype about George Mangos. I'm seeing a lot of people talking about George Mangos. George Mangos. He comes in as the favorite here at 21 years of age. That does say a lot. He's 7-0. I watched the tape on him, and I'm looking at him fight, and I think he is definitely a little bit inexperienced. He's been in some fights where he's getting controlled up against the cage. He's getting taken down. He's kind of, I don't want to say he's getting ragdolled, but he's getting smothered. He's not really in much danger, but he's losing minutes in these fights where he's getting taken down and he's being controlled. But then he finds a way out of it, man. He just finds a way out of it. Round 3, he'll find a submission, or he'll just stay calm and stay safe and work out of the position, beat the guy in a scramble after being held there for a while, and then submit him. So, I mean, this kid is good. I think he's very mature for his age at 21, because when he's in these fights, he's not exactly panicking. He's not like making a lot of mistakes. He's just staying calm and staying through the pace and looking good that way. Radley de Silva, on the other hand, watching his fights, the things that stands out to me is the dude has some crazy kicks. He's got a very in and out type of style, crazy kicks from the outside, a lot of spinning stuff, and when he throws his hands, it's very awkward, like very awkward entries where he kind of like jumps in. He'll throw 3 or 4 punches in a row and then maybe clinch with you, or he's back at range and then he's throwing some weird kicks. So very weird kicks from the outside, very weird striking overall. But mainly when this guy's getting wins, he's taking guys to the ground and he's submitting them. And I think his offensive wrestling is fairly solid. I think his offensive grappling is fairly solid. But he's also fighting in a promotion that I'm fairly familiar with from covering the Dana White Contender Series and covering the UFC in BFL, that I just don't think is very good. All right, BFL is the Canadian promotion that, there's not a lot of good Canadian fighters, man. There's just not. So if you get a regional promotion in Canada, I can't really believe that these fighters are going to be on a very good level. Now, this is a big thing with the Dana White Contender Series is these guys are coming from their regional scene. They can't really be fighting, great fighters. So, I mean, it's going to be a knock on some of these guys, but also at the same time, like, you can't really knock them too hard for it because you got to fight who's in front of you. And Radley de Silva has done pretty well against the guys that are in front of him. George Mangos, on the other hand, I think his level of competition is better. He's faced some guys that I think are fairly solid fighters, and he's been able to win. He's undefeated. He's 21. He's a slight favorite here. I think overall how the fight plays out is Radley de Silva's probably going to be moving around the outside, trying to, land his kicks from range. I think whoever grapples offensively first is going to have the advantage here, because I think de Silva's a good offensive wrestler, but I haven't really seen him, get wrestled up and see the defensive side to his grappling too much on tape. And I think George Mangos is a pretty dang good offensive grappler, and I've seen his defensive grappling, and I think it holds up against de Silva. So I could see why Mangos is the favorite here, but it is interesting because I think it could play out fairly close, or at least they could negate each other. But I do think there's more upside with George Mangos here being the younger guy, being the guy that's improving at a more rapid pace, that I think has fought the better level of competition, that I think is just better overall, just like slightly better. I don't think it's by a lot, but I think, in a couple years it could be by a lot. So I think that's what I'm trying to say here is George Mangos is going to be my pick as a slight favorite here. Is interesting. I'm not sure if I would lay it. Probably have to watch it a little bit more, but we'll see. I think George Mangos is going to be a good fighter at the UFC, and I think if he gets a win here, he's probably getting a contract. He is pretty young, though. We'll see if Dana wants to give him that, or if he wants to let him progress, as his career goes on. But either way, George Mangos is going to be the pick. Moving on to a short notice call up here. Murtaza Talha comes in as the underdog against the short notice fighter in Baysangur Susurkaev. Now, Murtaza Talha was on the Contender Series last year. He fought Rodolfo Bellato. He was stepping in as the undefeated guy. He looked really good. He was fighting in Brave for most of his career. I think every single fight in his career he fought in Brave. And he was undefeated. Fought some pretty solid guys, finishing most guys within the first or the second round. And then he fought Rodolfo Bellato, who came in as a huge favorite, minus 300 or higher. And Bellato had already lost on the Contender Series before. And he just looked terrible. He looked awful. I don't know if he was training with, Shamil Gaziev and they were blobbing each other up or what, but he did not look good in that fight. And he gassed out and Bellato TKO'd him in the second round. Actually, I believe I had a bet on Bellato there, or had the bet on the over 1.5, something like that. But Murtaza Talha did not look good in that fight. And now it's again, like same with Yuri Panferov, who we talked about earlier. He lost in the Contender Series against Bellato in bad fashion. What has he done since then? Well, if you take a look at his Tapology, all he's done since then is fight. He has one fight, and it's against a guy who I believe was like 0-4, and they flagged it on Tapology for fight fixing, like possible fight fixing. So that right off the bat is a terrible look for Talha to come in here having one fight since his last fight of the Contender Series, and it's a flag for fight fixing. Basically, they matched him up with a guy that had no chance of beating him because he was that bad. And the reason I think they did that is because he's moving down to 185. He was at 205, so he's moving down to 185, and they probably wanted him to make the 185-pound weight and have like a fixed fight or like an easy fight to where they could say he makes the weight and he gets a little bit of experience doing that, kind of like a trial run of a weight cut. But either way, it's still not good. Still not good. So, I mean, there's a lot of red flags for Talha coming in here. And on the other side, Susurkaev, undefeated guy. You watch this guy's tape. I think this guy looks really good. Like, he looks fluid. He's a fluid striker. He looks like he's in control of everything. And at times, it honestly looks like he thinks he's too good, like, to be in there. He's kind of a Russian Dagestani, or I mean, he's Chechnya. I think he's Chechnyan. I think he's a Chechen guy that has like a little bit of swag to him, man. Like, you see some of these Russians, they're in there, they're doing their thing, and no emotion. Like Susurkaev's like bobbing and weaving and like kind of like emoting on him a little bit. Like, a lot of swag from this guy. He trains at Killcliff FC, which is obviously a good camp down in South Florida, and mostly a striking camp. And he is a very good striker. Still 24 years of age. He is dangerous. He's fought at ACA mostly before he came over to the States, and he was knocking out everybody at ACA. ACA is a good promotion and in Russia. And once he came over to the States, he's got a decision victory and a KO victory his last time out in round 2. So it's short notice for him, which I don't really like because, maybe his cardio is not too good, but he hasn't really shown any cardio issues, and Murtaza Talha has. So, I mean, if there are some cardio issues in this fight, it's probably going to be from Talha, especially now cutting down to 185 as well. So, I mean, I think Susurkaev should probably be able to get this one done. He's got to mind his P's and Q's early on because that's when Talha is going to be most dangerous. He's got some power. He's got some pretty good wrestling, and Susurkaev can be taken down, but he is a pretty good grappler as well. He finds his way out of the positions, if not reverses to a better position. So, I mean, I think Susurkaev got it covered. I really do. I think he could break him, into the second to the third round, fight another TKO, or just, cruise his way to a decision victory. But I think Susurkaev got him, dude. I think he does. I watched this guy's tape. I'm like, how is this guy not in the UFC yet? Like, we have a lot worse guys in the UFC than Susurkaev. Like, this dude should probably be in the UFC over a lot of those guys. So, Susurkaev going to be the pick this week. Minus 350 is interesting because it is short notice for him, but I do think he probably wins 8 out of 10 times. Probably somewhere around there. So, interesting fight. Couple of, guys that I think are suited for the division, but I don't really think Talha has the grit to him. I just don't. We'll say. So, Susurkaev, going to be the pick. Let's move on. Welterweight bout here. Jimmy Drago comes in as a plus 160 dog, taking on Ty Miller. Ty Miller's minus 200, and I got a little qualm with Ty Miller. Maybe it's not. I'm not really sure. This is kind of a side tangent, so if you're not up for it, you can just skip it. But when I'm putting these graphics together, right, it's kind of tough to find good quality pictures of these guys to put on here. A lot of them, they're like blurry or they're really tough to find. So I have to go to their Instagrams sometimes to screenshot them and then blow them up and put them on the screen. And I couldn't find a good picture of Ty Miller. So I tried to go to his Instagram and it said page could not be found. Sometimes that happens. You know, if you go on Tapology, you clicked on the Instagram, sometimes the page hasn't been found. Like that happens. That means their account is just not there anymore. It's an old link. But then I was looking on pictures on Google, and it said there was pictures on Google from his Instagram. But when I clicked on them to try to go to Instagram, they weren't there. It just said page not found. So that got me thinking. I'm like, dude, did Ty Miller block me? Like, did he block my account at some point? I definitely don't know. I didn't know who he was until I started to do this breakdown. But if that's the case, and Ty Miller blocked me on Instagram, pretty weak sauce, dude. Pretty weak sauce. Or maybe he just blocked me because he knew, I'd probably be covering the Contender Series and he didn't want to see any videos I made on him leading up to the fight or something like that. I don't know. But either way, side tangent, Ty Miller, I think, has blocked me on Instagram. Very weird. Don't know who he was before a couple days ago when I looked at the card. Jimmy Drago, on the other hand, going to be a guy that comes in here with a lot of support because I believe he's an ex-drug addict from New York. And sometimes, those guys he's a well-spoken guy. You look at his Instagram and he's on like some podcasts. Like, he's a pretty well-spoken guy. And he's got a lot of experiences. So, a lot of people relate to that. They want to see him win. That's cool. He's the older guy here. Ty Miller's 25. That pretty much broke down who these guys are. But stylistically, Jimmy Drago's a guy that wants to impose his physicality with big power shots. He's got a nice left hook. Kind of looks like me when I'm out there sparring. I'm out there sparring. Guys come in. I just spam that left hook. I got a nice little left hook. You coming in? Bah! Little left hook to the chin. He loves to throw the left hook. He also loves to throw it overhand right into a takedown. I think this guy likes to just be physical in there and try to break you. Because I don't think he's like some amazingly skilled fighter. But he's got a lot of heart. He's pretty strong. And he wants to break you as the fight goes on. On the other hand, I think Ty Miller is the exact opposite. Exact opposite. Not just saying that because he possibly blocked me on Instagram. But I think Ty Miller is more skills. He does have, he has a lot of skills. I will say that. His boxing is pretty sharp. His 1-2, very sharp. He's big for the weight class, 6'2". He's long for the weight class as well. He's just a guy that wants to stalk you down, just wait for you to throw, counter with a 1-2. Or if you're not going to throw, jump in with a 1-2. And then if you try to wrestle him, he doesn't have the best takedown defense, but he does have pretty dang good get-ups. Like, this guy's getting taken down a lot in some of these fights, but he's getting up relatively quickly, and guys aren't really able to get off damage on the ground. They're not really able to get to his back, stuff like that. He can get taken down, but he's good at getting back up, so he doesn't lose many minutes that way. I think this fight ultimately comes down to, can Ty Miller keep it up for 15 minutes? And I think he probably can. But how effective is it going to be? Because I think Jimmy Drago comes in here and he's going to try to break him. I think we could see some cage push as well. Can he do it for 15 minutes is also another question. For a pick, give me the dog and Jimmy Drago because Ty Miller probably blocked me on Instagram, and that's a pussy-ass move, okay? Give me Jimmy Drago for the pick. Not sure if I'll bet it. But I do think Ty Miller is probably good enough to be in the UFC. So, I think both guys probably are good enough to be in the UFC. And at 25 years of age, Ty Miller's probably going to be able to get there eventually. But I'll take Jimmy Drago for the pick here. I think you could just outdog him. And sometimes on these Contender Series fights, the skills don't even matter. It's just kind of who wants it more or who has the mental capacity to be the best on that night. Because that's what it comes down to sometimes. Some of these guys, are just not very good, and they still pull off wins. Some of these guys are very good, and they don't pull off wins because they aren't ready for that show. So I think Jimmy Drago's ready for the show. I'll take him for the pick. All right, before we get into the final fight on the night, I want to remind you, if you want all the bets, jump in the Homo Fight Picks Premium membership. On the year, we're positive 44.55 units in 2025. We will be having Dana White Contender Series bets as well. So this is the first week, but last year, we were both positive 15 units or more. So I was positive 15.48 units on Dana White Contender Series last year. That's throughout 10 weeks. And Nolan, who you'll also get all of his bets in the Homo Fight Picks Winnable, was positive 16.66 units on Dana White Contender Series last year as well. You can use code Dana when you sign up to get a 7-day free trial. There's a link down in the description below. And on the bottom of the screen, obviously, you're going to see if you sign up with code Dana, not only are you going to get the Dana White Contender Series bets on Tuesday, you're also going to get the UFC 319 bets, and then you're also going to get the Dana White Contender Series bets on the following Tuesday as well. So lots of value going on right there. If you join the premium membership, there's no upcharge for like the Contender Series bets or anything. You're going to get all of them. You're going to get the Contender Series bets. You're going to get the UFC bets and the PFL. We also got PFL this Friday as well, so we'll probably have bets on that. So, I mean, a lot going on in MMA this week, so it's probably a good week to get signed up, and you can do it for free for 7 days with code Dana. Link down in the description below. All right, final fight of the night. At least that's what it's scheduled, but we got Ilian Bouafia coming in as the favorite at minus 260, taking on Neemias Santana, who comes in at plus 175. Bouafia, obviously big for the division, 6'5", both relatively the same age. And I think Bouafia is probably the more traditional type of fighter. And I actually wrote that down. Like, he is definitely the more technical, traditional type of fighter. But Santana's a dog, dude. Santana's a dog. You watch this guy fight, it's very off and on because the guy's like stalking you down, not really throwing anything, but stalking you down. And then he's just going to explode with some big shots. And if he doesn't feel like there's danger coming back at him, he's just going to march you down, like continue to march you down the entire fight. So if you can't get this guy's respect, he's going to break you and he's going to take over. Now, Bouafia, I think, is probably going to be able to get his respect, especially early on, because Bouafia not only is 6'5", but he has a pretty dang long reach, and he's got a long left hand. You watch any of these guys' fights, all he wants to do is land his left hand down the middle. That's all he wants to do. And he's been able to get by on doing that and knocking guys out in round one with that left hand for most of his career until his last fight where he went to a decision, and it really wasn't much of a fight. Like, it was a pretty boring fight. And that was a little bit eye-opening to me because his opponent really wasn't that great either. And you look at early in his career, he's not really fighting anybody all that great or anybody that gives him much resistance. So Bouafia, what you got to know about him stylistically is he's a southpaw striker, loves to throw that left hand down the pipe. He can wrestle a little bit. He's not a guy that really looks to offensively wrestle, but if you're going to clinch up with him, he can definitely get a takedown, pretty heavy on top, and he's got a decent get-up game, but he can be held up against the cage a little bit as well. Neemias Santana, I said a little bit earlier, but I mean, he's a guy that wants to stalk you down, wait to land big shots, and if there's no threat coming back at him, he's just going to walk you down and try to break you. And I think he could do a similar thing here, man, because Bouafia can be caught staring a lot. If he can't land that left hand, I'm not really sure this guy knows what to do. And Santana, definitely a more diverse arsenal of attacks on the feet, pretty solid leg kicks. He's going to pressure. His explosive movements are very awkward. He'll like throw a 3-2, and then he'll go like uppercut, mid burp. Wow. It's just weird, man. He just fights kind of weird. It honestly reminds me a little bit of like a Dricus du Plessis blitz at times, but it's a little bit more coordinated. Very weird. I don't know. I tend to lean towards the underdog here just because I think Santana... Now, the only bad part about Santana is he can be put on his back. If you take this guy down, He's going to work to get back up, but he can settle on bottom position for a little bit. He does hit hard, though, and I really think this is a fight where I'd rather be on the underdog than lay in minus 260 on Bouafia. I think if Bouafia runs away with it, it's probably around one knockout. Santana is hittable, but he has shown pretty solid toughness, and Bouafia's left hand down the pipe is probably going to be able to land early and probably land pretty often, especially in the apex cage. But as the fight progresses, I think Santana's probably going to have his chances to either run away with it, find a finish, or just take over and win the last couple rounds. I think Santana's probably going to be the side for me. So give me Santana here for the pick. It's a good fight. I think it's a fun fight where both guys are going to have their chances to find a knockout. And just taking the dog here. Neemias Santana is going to be the pick for me. I appreciate y'all for watching. Like the video for me. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be back here every single week with the Dana White Contender Series breakdown, breaking down all the fights. It's going to be a good time. We got UFC 319 this week as well. Excited for that. But Tuesdays, we're back, boys. We're back. Tuesdays, we are back. We are watching fights, betting on fights every Tuesday for the next 10 weeks. It's going to be a good time. Appreciate y'all. Till next time, Hey Job Picks.